The comfort of your favorite seat is now your comfy car selling command center, thanks to Carvana.
It doesn't get any better than this.
Your favorite seat's the best spot in the house. Make it even better by entering your license plate or VIN and getting a real offer in minutes.
There really is no place like home.
And speaking of home, Carvana will pick up your car from yours after you finalize your offer. Visit Carvana.com or download the app and sell your car from your comfy place. The comfort of your favorite seat is now your comfy car selling command center, thanks to Carvana.
It doesn't get any better than this.
Your favorite seat's the best spot in the house. Make it even better by entering your license plate or VIN and getting a real offer in minutes.
There really is no place like home.
And speaking of home, Carvana will pick up your car from yours after you finalize your offer. Visit Carvana.com or download the app and sell your car from your comfy place.
In the late 1980s, most airlines were without formal UFO reporting systems. The bulk of UFO reports made by commercial pilots were handled by private organizations such as the Mutual UFO Network. Without a formal protocol for reporting UFOs, only a handful of pilots have made it onto official reports about strange phenomena they've witnessed during their flights. Not to mention, often pilots feel pressured to keep their experiences secret, as discussion about some of these strange events can be detrimental to their careers. On the evening of November 17, 1986, a Japanese Airlines flight traveling through the skies of Alaska would be witness to one of the most terrifying events of the crew's careers. A 30-minute encounter that was backed up by radar that remains to this day as one of the most intriguing and detailed UFO cases reported by a crew of a commercial airline. This case file joined the theorists as they put their seats and tray tables in their upright positions and talk about the tale of the Japanese Airlines 1628 UFO incident.
Welcome to Alien Theorists Theorizing Case File 181, the Japanese Airline 1628 UFO incident. I'm Braden.
I'm Zell.
I'm Dan.
Yeah, we didn't really discuss that intro before we did it, did we?
I was going to say that really rolls off the tongue, too.
I'm surprised Braden got 181 right.
I only got it right because I prepped the recording last night after Cosmic Channels. Yeah, I couldn't really remember what we were calling this one, so I just read the title of our Google Docs, and I was like, that's not the best.
You went with the long version of it, but you got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting UFO case.
Yeah, we're back into the aliens tonight. Well, maybe not aliens, but
something.
Possibly aliens.
Always possible. Let's just get right into it.
Sure. So this one's probably really interesting because it is probably one of the best. We probably say that about a lot of them, but it's one of the best documented and best supported UFO sightings. Pretty much like I would say like in history.
Yeah, this is basically the Roswell of the sky.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Well, I think this one even has more supporting data behind it because it involves a lot of people, both not just people, but also technology. So you have things like radar signatures. You've got different people. You see people seeing things, but you have like three reputable witnesses. You have another person who is observing them from the ground radar. There's a whole bunch of kind of facets involved, which I think make this probably one of the best and well kind of put together UFO sightings. You have a very solid, detailed timeline of what happened from beginning to end of this, pretty much like a little over 30 minutes. of an encounter that the crew of Japanese Airlines 1628 experienced.
And I can't, if anyone's like flown commercially and stuff, every now and then you'll be up at altitude and you'll catch another plane. Like you'll see another plane flying either below you or like across in another path. And they always, like, even just a plane that you can be like, oh, that's a plane, looks so out of place. It's so weird to see one.
Like while you're in the sky looking out of the window?
Yeah. I always just find that when you see another plane, you're like, it just looks weird. Like everything looks strange. So I couldn't imagine looking out and being like, that's not a plane.
I'm too busy looking down at the ground and feeling tall. I'm like, yeah, look at everything so small.
Everyone looks like ants.
Yeah, squish them.
They are ants, Andrew. They are ants. This encounter occurred on November 17th in 1986. The people who were reporting it were the Japanese Airline 1628 crew, which comprised of Captain Kenju Terauchi. Captain Terauchi was an ex-fighter pilot. He was a senior airline pilot with Japanese Airlines. He had more than 10,000 hours of flight experience, and he had been assigned to this cargo flight, which was leaving out of Paris to destination Reykjavik, to Anchorage, to Tokyo, and the cargo was French wine from Paris.
A lot of wine. That's a lot of wine.
So besides Terauchi, you had his co-pilot Takanori Tamafuji, and you had flight engineer Yoshio Tsukuba on board as well. And they were all sitting in the cockpit at the time that they sighted something very kind of out of the ordinary. So it's generally accepted that the encounter begins at about 5 p.m. Alaska time. And this is when the Anchorage Air Route Traffic Control, and I'm probably just going to call them ATC from here on out.
Yep.
Just be easier.
Easy.
And they contacted the JAL flight to verify that they had them on radar. So they had just made contact with them. And then they asked the pilots to adjust their heading so the plane would pass south of what is Fort Yukon and the city of Fairbanks. So after this course change, about 5:11 p.m., just a few minutes later, Captain Terauchi said he was sitting on the left side of the cockpit and he saw what appeared to be unidentified lights outside of his window to the left and below.
Basically like pacing their plane, like same speed, like just off on their left.
Right. At this point, Captain Terauchi didn't really make anything of these lights because he was aware that there are at least 2 military bases within pretty much spitting distance of Anchorage. So he wasn't really concerned at that point. So he's like, okay, it's just probably just like a military craft, or it could be just another plane. It's not a big deal.
From what I read is he did find it peculiar that these planes were choosing to kind of stay on the dark side of the skies.
Right.
Sure. Right.
Like
and that's probably
shadows.
part of what, this is part of what he kind of started describing, like these lights were exhibiting unusual behavior for like aircraft, any kind of normal aircraft that would be in the airs at that time. So he remembers seeing these lights for about several minutes, and then the lights kind of started bouncing around the sky, moving back and forth in kind of impossible angles or something to that effect. And then these lights, so some of these, and then these lights actually stopped right in front of the plane. Maybe I think they were saying something like 500 feet. They probably estimated these things were right in front of them.
It's and like right at this moment, it's painfully obvious to me what's going on. This is intergalactic insurance scammers. They're hitting the brake checks on them, right? Getting in front, quick tap of the brake. They're looking for a rear ender to collect those insurance claims.
The space dollars?
Space dollars, yeah.
The insurance lottery.
I've seen it a million times before.
Yes. Pull in front of someone, slam the brakes on, collect that ICBC, baby.
Classic brake check.
Yeah.
Now, these lights were so bright and that they just pretty much illuminate the entire cockpit is pretty much to what Terauchi recalls. And that they actually felt a type of, or some type of sensation of warmth through the glass.
And from everything I've read, like when I first looked into this, I thought it was heat from like a propulsion system. But then, like, further reading and clarifying, it's more like heat when the sun hits you on a cold day.
Yeah.
And you can feel the warmth of the sun. Like the light was emitting heat. It wasn't like it was they were getting blasted, heating up the front end of the plane through some propulsion system.
These two UFOs who we thought initially thought were just some type of other aircraft seemed to like he says seems to defy physics and like jet across the sky, and then yes, about 1,000 feet in front of them, it turned into they stacked each other. That's what they looked like. So the lights instead of being side by side, they looked like they were stacked each other, and then like an irradiating light energy filled the cockpit.
And like when I was reading about it said it was kind of like a white and yellow strobe.
Right, like an amber whitish lights, or like a salmon color was described by Tamafuji, the co-pilot. So kind of like that pinkish, like a pinkish color.
He was
I'm
so
imagining.
Manly, he dared not say pink.
Well, it's like an orange. Well, like an orange color. I mean, salmon sometimes is orange.
It's a nice color. Beautiful.
So probably like an
pink.
orangish whitish color.
It's pink.
It's pink.
You're kidding yourself.
The light
it's
was
fucking pink.
Cockpit was filled with a pink light. Let's call it what it is.
It's fine.
So Teruichi described these lights almost flaring and kind of alternating in some type of what he interpreted as some type of sequence. And he said that this kind of reminded him of how a space shuttle fires its maneuvering thrusters. That was one of the things that he's most quoted as saying, is from his observations, this thing seemed to be firing off these lights, or these appear to be thrusters. He's also quoted as saying that there appeared to be like other lights kind of shooting off from it, or sparks emitting from this craft, or these two crafts, like side by side each other, because they had shifted into some type of from like their on top form, a vertical formation, to a horizontal formation.
So they keep changing their orientation. Is what it looks like.
Right. So that's what it appeared to happen, at least to Teruichi. So
this is where he's like, something's off here. I better, after about good 10 minutes, he's like, something's off. This isn't making any sense. I better call this in.
Well, Tamafuji, the co-pilot, contacted Anchorage ATC, and for about 30 minutes after this, so this is like the entire encounter lasted about 30 minutes, the ground control and JL were in constant contact talking about this UFO, like going back and forth about what they were doing. So there's 30 minutes is a long time when this crazy shit is happening to you. I imagine.
Kidding.
Like it's probably like an eternity to pilots, especially pilots who, like, if this is like, if this is some type of craft that is very near you, it's some type of aerial vehicle or something flying that close to you, you only have seconds to respond and then try to avoid a midair collision, which is every pilot's worst nightmare. This is probably going to be something that really fucking sucks, because you're like, I'm not flying a super jet fighter or nothing. I've just got this giant Airbus, and I'm like, okay, do I need to turn? What can I do?
Well, Tamafuji was like, well, we're fucked, boys. Let's crack into this wine. Just go out with a buzz.
Reaches behind the seat, opens the first cask.
Yeah, starts popping bottles.
Yeah, I mean, as a pilot though, like having that that feeling of like a midair collision would just be the worst. Especially as you said, Dan, like they're not in fighter jets. They're in what would be considered a cruise ship of the air.
It's a 747.
It's basically what fucking Baloo drives and Tailspin.
The Sea Duck.
Yeah, man.
I mean, that thing's pretty maneuverable.
Well, because he's got
I
Baloo
see Baloo
driving
pull
it.
some crazy shit in that plane.
Yeah, because Baloo's driving it. Tamafuji and Teruichi aren't any Baloos. Come on.
And like right away, their first initial thoughts when they first saw them is they were like, well, maybe this is potentially like a couple military craft out doing a military exercise. So when they're, calling down to ATC, if like they have these things on radar and they're going, we have nothing in the air. Hold on, we'll confirm if it's military. There's no military craft. Like, describe what you're seeing. I imagine your stress levels all of a sudden like, oh, we have some like, unknown craft. We're not sure what they are. We're not sure if this is some military exercise. If it is, it's like you're like, it's not the States, because they don't know about it. They're like,
Dude, it's not Terahuchi. Are you kidding me? This guy's got over 10,000 hours of fucking experience. He's an ex-fighter pilot. He sees that thing. They don't know what it is. Immediately in his ears, all he starts hearing, revving up your engine, listen to her howl, metal under tension, begging you to touch and go. Kenny Loggins plays, hits evasive maneuvers. He's not fucking scared, man.
he's like,
Highway to the danger zone.
Buckle up, boys.
Well, then what's the Tamafuji's like, why do you keep calling me Goose, man? No, like, it's all good. Stop.
Are you telling me that Top Gun was based off this incident?
I'm telling you,
Loosely.
we don't know
Very
that
loosely.
wasn't.
Loosely based, perhaps.
So they have an exchange with Anchorage ATC, and ATC is like asking them to do a couple things. You know, take a quick survey of what's going on. So they're asking them like, what are the cloud conditions? That's the first thing they're asking.
Right.
What does it look like up there? And so Teruuchi said they looked around and it was pretty much clear. Like there were some light wispy clouds below them. Nothing really that could have been considered like heavy cloud cover or anything like that.
Nothing that you could mistake for moving craft left to right, stacking with a glowing radiation coming off them.
Right. And so now the ground radar, this kind of gets mixed up because when I went through the research for this one, there was stuff where the ground radar from Anchorage ATC didn't pick anything up. But then there's also reports that they definitely did pick something up, but it wasn't, they didn't pick anything up in front of the aircraft. They picked something up with like a signal, and you can find videos of this where one of the FAA officials who investigated it like spotted, like you can definitely see it. There's like the transponder, like watching on a radar screen, you can see the transponder signal of JAL 1628 like going, and then you see something pop up behind it, not in front of it, but behind it. So they pick up something behind it, but they're not confirming that there's something in front of the craft. So
right.
That kind of freaks everybody out for a little minute. So they're picking up something, but they don't know what it is. And like we said, they contacted the closest Air Force base at this point, and that's Elmendorf
Air Force.
Is that in fucking Midgard?
Yeah, where are we here?
So they contact them and they ask them like, the Elmendorf Regional Operation Control Center, if they had any aircraft deployed at that point. And they said, no, we don't have anything up there at any point. And so around 5:25 p.m., Anchorage ATC requests that they, put up their, they called it the ROC. It's a ROC radar. The ROC radar, and they reported receiving a surge primary return. So this was some type of signal. A surge primary's return is a radar echo without a corresponding transponder signal. So it's something, but it's not a plane because it's a plane without a transponder, which is
it's a UFO.
Highly unlikely.
It's a UFO.
UFO.
So they did. I read that too. And I wasn't sure what that was, but thanks for clarifying. So they did pick up something. It had no signal, so they didn't know what it was. But they did have evidence there was something in the sky.
Right. So Elmendorf and now the
and you can't take
Anchorage
Elmendorf.
ATC have picked something up, and then Teruuchi actually utilized his aircraft's digital weather radar to try to get an image of the object. And he said that he eyeballed it. And I don't know how difficult that is, but he kind of eyeballed where the objects were, made an estimate, pointed their digital radar at it. And his radar picked up something as well. And it was some type of large object about 7 or 8 miles at the 10 o'clock position from their aircraft.
So not these first two. There was something else he's picking up.
Well, it's just another radar,
just another signal
of something. So this thing was at the 10 o'clock position, so 7 to 8 miles. So it would still be kind of in front of him. Or
you can hear the tapes of them talking. And at this point, when he's picking it up and he's saying to ATC that like, it's quite big. It's quite, whatever it is. This is
quite big.
It's quite big. Like They're like, how big? He's like, quite big.
Big.
And it was like from like their guesses, like whatever they were picking up was like double the size of their cargo plane.
Right. And so Terryuchi and his crew are now approaching the city of Fairbanks, where they had switched off their instrument lights because they didn't want them interfering with the kind of, they could see the lights of the city and then they could get a better kind of idea of what they were looking at out their windows. And this is when, Terryuchi has his best look of this craft because he said that it was on his side, like, so the left side of the aircraft, and just kind of like out to the side, probably about the 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock position, pacing them was this enormous object. And from his quote, like he goes on record at saying this thing is probably the size of like an aircraft carrier.
Yeah.
It's funny because, you know what I mean? Like you don't want to get too far into fucking stereotypes, but you know, you like to think of Japanese people as very reserved and like polite. They get on their microphone and like, gozaimashita, sumimasen. Okay, big planet to very big. You know, people are like, yeah, like, what do you mean, man? Like, no, he's big. No, it's the size of a fucking planet.
Yeah.
Like he's, they're very conservative.
Well,
like,
they're, you know what I mean? Like, you don't want to play into that fucking role, but you can see him being like, you know, sumimasen, excuse me.
It's quite big.
Quite
Yeah,
big.
it's very large.
Yeah, when they're on the radio and you listen to the tapes, like definitely English is not their first language, and the pilots are describing what they're seeing, or they're trying very hard to impress upon ground control. Like, there's something up here. Like, can you guys get a picture of it or get something? Like, we don't know what it is, you know? And even while they were up there, when this craft came out and these lights were appearing in front of them, they actually tried to take a picture of it. The crew in the cabin actually tried to take pictures of this thing. They both had cameras. Apparently Terryuchi had like a new camera and didn't know how to work it.
Well,
So
for like a 1980, what is it, 1986?
One of those like
Probably had a better time fucking sketching with an Etch-a-Sketch and using.
So
that as an
he
example.
couldn't do it. And then I think Tamafuji also attempted to get a photo as well, but his camera, he couldn't, like, he was having problems with his autofocus is what they reported. So he couldn't get a clear photo, or couldn't get a photo at all, or gave up trying to take a photo, which I was like, I would have taken a blurry photo anyways. Like, who gives a shit? Like, at this point,
Just take like 100. You might get one. You might get lucky on one.
yeah, but these guys are also seasoned pilots, so they're just trying to figure out what this thing is, and they're also up in the air. So I mean, these guys sound like consummate professionals, and they're just like, okay, well, we don't want to crash the plane, we don't want to crash into anybody. Let's figure out what this is, and kind of get us landed before we start freaking out. I'm sure.
So they request ATC. They're like, hey, listen, we're going to change our heading a little bit. We just want to get clear of this object. So we're going to change our heading, you know, swing out right a little bit. And they're like, yeah, do it. Like, pull away from this object. And as they do that, this object just
follows
banks
them.
with them. Just perfectly banks with them. And they're just like, yes, still here. Like, it's all good.
I got a couple of questions. So initially there's the two objects. They're in front of them. They irradiate them. Because he has a sketch of them where he thinks they're like have like a square. They look square to him, these two objects.
Yeah.
But then, so these objects, do they take off, or they just get ahead of them before they see the third, like what he describes it as, like a mothership, like a gigantic flying craft?
Yeah. So I think the ones that he saw, the very first one, are like, when he draws them, they're either cylindrical or they look like kind of like panels of lights.
Well, he doesn't really say exactly what they are, but from the back, they look like they have a square, like a square. They look square from the back is what he says in his sketches.
Yeah.
Like two.
So those lights like actually dropped. I think they dropped off at some point. Like, they dropped out of sight, like his direct line of sight or whatever. And then that's when the other one kind of popped up from behind him, from behind the craft, or on his side.
So you got like these first two are like the scout ships, and then they drop off, and then because we don't know what happens to these two crafts, so they either like rejoin or they're off. But now we have a aircraft carrier sized flying craft shadowing these dudes.
Right. So like Braden said, that they attempted now to take like evasive action of some type because they were afraid that either this thing was going to crash into them or they're going to crash into it. So they performed a 45-degree turn. Then they end up like doing an entire 360-degree turn, just trying shake
everything.
This thing.
I'm telling you, dude. Kenny Loggins was playing in his head. He knew what was going on.
He's like, I'm going to do a barrel roll next.
Yeah, man.
But I mean, they didn't go that far. But so after
and
the
like
plane
a full
came
360 in these things, it takes a while. Like
It's a
we're
big
not talking.
arc.
It's like
Yeah.
it's not like a quick U-turn in a car. This is like a 10-minute maneuver.
Yeah. So after they came out of this turn, they were still at 31,000 feet, and this object was still following them. So now at this point, Anchorage Air Traffic Control at 5:40 p.m. Had a United Airlines passenger jet that had departed from Anchorage and was heading towards Fairbanks. So they were on, they were heading in the same general direction towards JAL's 1628. And so since they were going to pass relatively closely, Anchorage ATC asked if the pilot would try to confirm what JAL 1628 was seeing.
Well, even before this, didn't they ask? They're like, "Hey, we're gonna request some military support," which was denied by them.
Well, yeah. There's also a report that they asked Terauchi and them, the crew, if they wanted military intervention because we didn't really know what that was going on. And I think Terauchi and them declined it.
Terauchi's got it handled, man. Jesus.
There's also some mention of Terauchi being familiar with another UFO incident where a pilot, I think is it the Mantell incident?
Yeah, the Mantell UFO incident.
The Mantell incident where
in Kentucky in 1948.
Right. So like at that incident, it was like a pilot in a P-51 Mustang or such, kind of went balls out trying to catch a UFO, ended up climbing too high, too fast, pretty much knocked out, blacked out because of oxygen deprivation, and then crashed his plane. So,
oh, fuck.
So yeah, I guess that's probably one of the only recorded deaths due to UFO.
Indirect death due to UFO.
So yeah, so he didn't want that to happen.
Well, and the other issue is that while we know it was a plane crash in the Mantell incident, a lot of people, the story was going around that it was like a hostile UFO, and that kind of took the sensationalized the story about him being, the death being attributed to a hostile UFO. So I think that weighed heavy on people worried about like these things could turn hostile in the skies.
Right.
So yeah, and I'm sure Terauchi was saying like, well, this thing hasn't really exhibited any hostile action. It hasn't really done anything. So don't send anything up here. I mean,
it's just the size of an aircraft carrier in the sky to our left. No big deal.
Well, my feeling is if Terauchi is familiar with the Mantell incident, I mean, he's probably familiar with some type of, whether it's like science fiction or something like that. So it's like, you don't want to send jets up there to fire rockets at a giant aircraft carrier sized ship and then piss it off.
Yeah,
true.
You're heavily vulnerable in this situation.
Or he's probably thinking, he's like, what would you even do? He's like,
pretty expendable.
He's familiar with, if he's former jet fighter pilot, he's like, you could send those guys up here. Fuck what they do. I mean, just pace the object. It's like, what we're doing right now. Maybe we would just make things worse.
We've got this under control. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I guess so. I guess that makes sense. Yeah. If it looks to be just shadowing you, whatever it is. So I guess, to call in a military jet, might trigger something. So
when the UA flight gets within about 25 miles, the pilot of the UA craft asked Anchorage ATC to have JAL's 1628 flash their lights so he can make sure like that's what we're seeing. We're seeing
that's what everyone knows. If someone brake checks you fucking high beam them.
Damn right.
Right.
And so when the planes actually approached within 12 miles of each other, the UA pilot got eyes on JAL 1628 and he reported seeing just their aircraft and nothing else.
So they didn't get a glimpse of anything or anything on radar at that point?
No, seemingly within that time between when the UA got up there and when they got to it, the craft had kind of disappeared or kind of fell off the back of 1628 and then out of sight and it's gone.
So do we know for sure that 1628 wasn't seeing this still when the other crew
they didn't see it.
They didn't see it.
They didn't report
but what I'm
seeing
wondering,
it.
like the Japanese plane, like the air.
No,
the Air
because
Japan-
at that point, the objects in front had disappeared and there was just the object tailing them. So they couldn't really see it. That's why they
so they
requested
don't know if it was
another.
there or not.
Yeah, that's
Right.
why they requested another airline to come up and take a peek.
Right. So then even after that, at 5:51 p.m., Anchorage ATC also requested there was actually a military flight, a totem flight. It's like a tactical something operations something flight to fly towards 1628 and take another look and just can verify what the UA had said. And they didn't see anything either. They just saw JAL 1628 by itself, nothing else.
So by this time, whatever object they were seeing had changed course or vanished or like, whatever. It's gone.
Yeah,
At
it was
this
gone. Yep. And then JL 1628 proceeded on to Anchorage and landed at 6:20 p.m. without any further incident.
Fuck. So you see, starts with 2 UFOs seeming to follow you and then proceed to like
Then a
pace you
massive
from in
one.
front. So the 2 are pacing you and then they disappear off and then a massive seeming, I like how he describes it as like a aircraft carrier or a mothership.
Yeah, this is like a 20-30 minute incident, which is pretty long. It's relatively long considering these things. Because most of the time, I think you kind of get pilots that say, oh, we saw something. Like we saw, there's something out there, like maybe like a light and it's gone, like a flash and it's gone. It's something incident. But actually having a craft pace your plane or having something pace your plane for 20 minutes or something like that is pretty nuts.
Well, that's why this case is really cool because usually it's like you see the orb or you see whatever for a brief time. Usually you don't even have time to take a picture, like make a sketch and it's gone. And then it's just like a MUFON encounter and it never gets investigated because there's no data. But this one.
Yeah.
Hey, was there any wine missing?
Well, that's what that's what I want to know. First of all, like you say, it's pacing, but not only is it pacing, but it's stalking it. It's like it's stalking its fucking prey. How do we know that it's really gold that these fucking aliens are after to power their ship? Maybe it's wine.
Yeah.
Maybe it's wine. Maybe they're after that fucking sweet, sweet red nectar.
He actually made the joke too, saying maybe they were after the wine because it was, I guess, a really high end wine from Paris, like a top end wine. So
I mean, it's the one flight flying that wine. Yeah, it was probably really good wine because it's just that flight was only for that shipment of wine.
So there's like thousands of cases of wines on this jumbo jet.
So we also get a great description and all this stuff. The reason we have so many records and we have a really great documentation of this sighting is because Terauchi filed an official report with the FAA. Like they actually had people out there at Anchorage debriefing him about what he saw, because you don't just get on the radio and you have a 30-minute conversation with air traffic control about something following your plane in the US airspace and nobody's going to talk to you after that, because it's fucking, once they got him down there, they had him go through in detail about what he had saw. Like they had him sit down in a room. I can't remember the first person who talking to him, but they had a full investigation done that didn't actually come to a conclusion, didn't even release a statement until March 5th.
Well, they probably were like, listen, let's keep this between us. We're going to work on this. We'll figure it out. Let's keep this on the DL. No big deal. What's the first thing Terauchi does when he gets back to Japan?
Fucking sings.
Oh, man, does he swing like a fucking canary?
Yeah.
Well, one of the first FAA officials to talk to him said it was his impression that Terauchi and the crew were
Genuine.
in what they had experienced. Like they had seen something. They were like the flight engineer and the co-pilot, he said, seemed to be in shock. Terauchi, whether it's, a product of his training or just experience and flying, he was still scared, but he was able to recall like what he saw, but there was definite fear in what he was describing. And so they had him put out he had made multiple drawings and diagrams of what they saw.
From what I understand, Teraheuchi was the one that did the majority of the statements. And,
yes.
You know what I mean? Like the two co-pilots or whatever we want to call them didn't really have many official statements. It was mostly Teraheuchi.
Yeah.
Most of the stuff that we get, the drawings, the descriptions, all those pretty much come from Teraheuchi. And then the other guys kind of confirm bits and pieces about what they saw. I mean, especially about the lights. I think Tsukuba was sitting behind Tamafuji in the cockpit, so he couldn't really see 100% what was in front of him. Tamafuji was also sitting there.
They just kept telling him to get back.
Get back.
Go get more wine.
Come on.
Give me another bottle.
Yeah.
So they pretty much just confirmed what they saw, but I think primarily Teraheuchi was the one who cited the large craft because it was on his side.
Yeah, it was like he was really the one who had the best look because it was like down to the left. So his co-pilot and the third guy in the cockpit didn't really have a good look. They were probably trying to peer around him, but obviously the guy he's still trying to fly a plane, so you can't crawl over him, look out the window. So yeah, all the drawings and stuff and most of the statements are from him. Yeah. I was just gonna say like before that, like the investigation, like because this is like we're 86.
87.
Yes.
80. This one's 86. November 17th, 86. So we're still like this is end Cold War, right?
Very close end.
Very close to the end.
Like the Soviet Union would probably fall within like another, is it 87?
87, 88. When the wall come down.
88.
My history is bad. But so this is still like, we're still Cold War. So anything, especially in Alaska, so close to this, like USSR, like any
Soviet
type
Union
of
was
craft
in
like
death
that.
throes at this point. Like it was still like, I think very much Gorbachev and them were kind of like things were slowing down at this point, but it still was. Yeah, we were still in Cold War. This was taken very seriously because even if you are in, Soviet Union at this point is probably in estimates of U.S. intelligences. It's not going to last very much longer. You still don't want them being like, okay, maybe our intelligence was bad and now they're flying crazy aircraft or there's some other threat.
Like one last ditch effort, right? Like of their failing state. Like, okay, we can get like, so you'd still be a high on guard, like for anything, especially in U.S. airspace. Maybe
they took a page from Hitler, wanting to round up all his best fucking scientists and shit like that as a last ditch effort to, you know what I mean, turn the tides. And maybe they had some wacky Russian scientists that were able to create this type of technology.
There we go. And maybe they're after that plane because that wine was precious as well. Russians love to drink.
Hey, listen, we're taking their word that there was fucking wine on the board. I don't know. Maybe there's more precious cargo on board.
I didn't see the manifest of that shipment.
Maybe it was a airplane full of sexy convicts wearing wife beaters and hair blowing through their fucking, you know what I mean? The wind blowing through their hair.
Aliens need Nicolas Cage.
Gotcha. This was the story of Con Air, you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. That's where they got it from. You could have Braden. Braden was playing Nicolas Cage over there. Look at him. Right?
That's pretty, yeah. Nicolas Cage is pretty, yeah.
Nicolas Cage, that's you.
That's good.
That's good.
That hair slicked back.
Got the same hairline.
That's what I'm saying. Nicolas Cage, man.
All right. This case file, I mean, there's a lot of evidence and a lot more stuff to go through on the conclusions here, but we're going to take a quick beer break. And
Before we do, every time someone says Teraheuchi, I think of that old Alan Jackson song.
Way down yonder on the chair.
Teraheuchi. It gets hotter than a hoochie coochie.
All right.
It gets hotter than a Tamafuji.
Yeah.
Oh, on that note, okay, definitely a beer time. Here, we'll be right back.
Yeah.
If you and your team want to cut down on busy work and get more choice and control over accounts payable, you need Bill. Bill Accounts Payable is your secret weapon for saving time on AP. And with a special offer at Bill.com/podcast, you'll save money too. With Bill, streamline your entire AP process, including bill creation, approvals, and payments. You can pay with ACH, credit card, check, and international wire transfer. Plus, you can easily integrate with most accounting software. No wonder hundreds of thousands of businesses are already using Bill to manage their AP. Schedule a free demo now to see how Bill can automate your financial operations. And right now, get 15% off when you subscribe to Bill Accounts Payable. There's never been a better time to sign up. This special offer is available for a limited time only at Bill.com/podcast. Terms apply. See bill.com/podcast for details.
That's not just the sound of that first sip of Morning Joe. It's the sound of someone shopping for a car on Carvana from the comfort of home.
That's a good blend.
It's time to take it easy, like answering some easy questions to get pre-qualified for a car in minutes.
Talk about starting the morning right.
Just like customizing your terms so your car fits your budget. Visit Carvana.com or download the app to experience car shopping the way it should be. Convenient, comfortable.
Hello, and welcome to Scare You to Sleep. Have you ever felt like you needed something a little darker than whale noises or counting sheep to unwind at the end of the day? Maybe you've realized horror itself can be a strange but relaxing escape from reality. Every week, I bring to you a myriad of bone-chilling tales, from 19th century dusty tomes to modern up-and-coming authors to truer spooky tales like Reddit mysteries and time slips, all accompanied by a gentle voice and ambient music and sounds so that you feel immersed and lost in your own personal horror story. You can find Scare You to Sleep exclusively on Spotify. So, grab some earbuds, a cozy corner, and join me, Shelby Scott, every Thursday, and let's get unsettled together. Now, go get some sleep. Sweet dreams.
So Terauchi files their report with the FAA, and they go into full investigation mode, and they make this big deal about it since, like we said, it's the end of the Cold War. Need to find out what exactly happened. And so from the time that this happened, actually, Philip Klass, if you guys remember him.
Yep.
Pretty big skeptical investigator. You know, I kind of thought he was cool at first. Now I'm like, this guy kind of sounds like an asshole.
He hates UFOs pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
them.
that pretty much just seems to describe him. Because he conducted an investigation into the incident on behalf of the Committee for Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal. So prior to the FAA releasing their official statement, he released a couple, like more than one, statement on January 22nd was his first one. And he concluded that the occurrence was the crew. This was the first one. He says that the crew misidentified Jupiter and Mars.
Oh my God.
Which were in the sky that night and documented to be unusually bright at that time.
Imagine being the pilots and being told, like, yeah, it was just a couple planets. Idiots.
Just two stationary planets in the horizon you mistaked for them shadowing you and then blasting energy through your cockpit windshield and then flying
you're like,
away.
what about them on radar? You're like, yeah, we picked them up on radar too. 2 planets.
And I'm pretty sure, like, pretty quickly, other skeptics and or people who were also looking into the case quickly blasted that apart because they said, no, Jupiter and Mars are on the opposite side of where the aircraft was. They're in the opposite side of the sky that from the direction that the airplane was traveling. So there's no way that it would just be pacing them. And then they would also, like, throughout their maneuvers that they made in the sky, the 45-degree turn, the full 360 that they did, there's no way that you would go and misidentify 2 planets,
what
sky, bodies in the sky. Like, there's no way you would do that.
Let's say just something happened where, okay, this was an atmospheric phenomenon. Sure, the 2 small lights. What about the fucking mothership?
Right.
It's a shadowing mothership.
So later, that Committee for Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal would offer a second explanation. They made another conclusion that it was light reflecting off clouds of ice crystals.
So there we go. Atmospheric,
which is a real phenomenon that does happen. That's how you get, like, isn't it how you get, like, those light pillars and things like that? I believe those are also kind of caused by certain weather conditions that involve ice crystals.
Yeah, and you get those rings around the moon and shit.
The amount of like the rarity of all these events to happen. Like, okay, so for that to happen, it's super rare, but that's obviously what these guys seen. We hear about fucking thousands of UFO sightings that they attribute to these like 1 in a fucking 5 million chance weather phenomenons and stuff like that. It just doesn't fucking add up. Doesn't at all.
Well, and these are like this isn't a novice pilot. This is like a seasoned pilot. He'd be making this report every time he saw a star in the sky if that was the case.
Yeah. Half an hour.
And then also a lot of people said that would be impossible for them to make that mistake because of the altitude of the plane at 30,000 feet, 30 to 35,000 feet where they were traveling. There's no way that you would have ice crystals up that far reflecting light. The type of intensity and the patterns that they were doing. This is just that is something that wouldn't happen. Yes, the occurrence is exceedingly rare, and you also would not see anything that high up.
Well, at the same time, so we're in November in Alaska, so it's dark, right?
Yeah, it's dark.
Like it's pitch black at this time. We're at 5 o'clock. The encounter's to 5:09. It starts. So
it's probably, if it's not pitch black, it's getting dark.
No, like, because you're way up there. Like like here in Kelowna, yeah, it's probably not dark yet. But like if you're that far north in winter, like you're almost at the 30 days of night, like in the Arctic Circle, that far up. So yeah, I said that because like I could see if it was like maybe at sunset, like some type of crazy sunset phenomena or something. But it seems like it would already be too dark for that.
So the FAA, when they released their final report, it was a little bit strange because when they released their report, the only thing that they really remarked on was the radar signatures of the planes. They didn't directly address the pilots, physically seeing these craft and what they described seeing, but they actually just addressed the radar signatures that they had picked up from ground radar, and their explanation that it was a split radar return from the JAL flights. It was kind of like an echo or something like that. So they were seeing two things, but it was actually just one.
And what causes a split radar return? Is that an atmospheric thing as well, or?
I couldn't exactly. I'm not a radar technician. So
yeah, I kind of looked briefly into it.
As much as I want to be,
didn't really know.
But yeah, it's kind of hard. I tried to look that up and I tried to figure out what that was, but it was a little bit difficult for me to figure out what a radar split. I mean, there's a lot of different things that can cause, from what I was looking at, there's a lot of things that can cause interference with radar or cause these kinds of occurrences where you get double images or things of that sort. But that was pretty much their conclusion, was that the radar signatures that they were picking up was just JAL both times. That was it. That was their explanation. That is what they saw, but they didn't address, the mothership or the lights changing, the formation shifting lights, any of that stuff. I believe that it was just that is what they addressed.
They just went with the simplest, most straightforward answer. Like it must have been a radar split because that's the only thing that makes sense to us. So therefore,
and that's only the only real hard data they had. So I think that's kind of like was also part of the explanation, is that we can't really speak to, because if you're a federal organization, you're not going to go out and just be like, okay, well, it might have been this. They're like, this, from the information that we do have, this is the conclusion we came to based off of that, the analysis of that information that we have hard copies of and whatever. Right. So, but the thing is, prior to this, or at least I think a little bit before this, you had FAA's Alaskan region consult with John Callahan, who is the FAA division chief of the Accidents and Investigations branch. So John Callahan, he didn't really have any knowledge of this. When they talked to him, he didn't really had heard about this thing before, but he had gotten, he got his hands on the radar and the radar videos, the radar tapes that they had, and then the drawings and the reports that Terauchi and his crew had made when they had landed in Anchorage. Right. So they took the radar tapes, they transcribed the interviews, and they kind of put together a presentation because they were invited. I think they were invited to, invited to send all of this information to FAA in Washington for review. And then Callahan actually had to go to DC and have a meeting with the officials And then in this meeting, he said, or he's gone on record saying that this was also attended by representatives from the FBI, CIA, and even President Reagan's scientific study team, and among other people.
Well,
so
and
it's
Reagan
the
was
FAA weren't the only people in the room.
Reagan was a huge UFO guy.
Well, he didn't he claim to have a few encounters himself?
Yeah, he loved UFOs.
I mean, Star Wars was their kind of thing for a while. Not the
President Reagan created Star Wars? What?
well, let's start with the lasers in space program.
He's famous for that speech saying like, "What would bring us more together than a force from outside our planet," or whatever he says.
Yeah.
Like that famous speech about pretty much saying like, if aliens came, we'd all be friends. So everyone's like, "Well, he must know something then." But yeah, he was always interested. So
yeah, and Callahan, his experience with this is he found it quite shocking when one of the officials, after thoroughly reviewing multiple times, having them go through the presentation of this information, these tapes, and watching and hearing the interviews, someone specifically spoke to him and the people that he was with, his team, and said, this event never happened.
And we were never here.
Then they threw down some smoke bombs and peace
Have a
out.
look into this silver pen thing here. Just look right there in that little flash. Fucking
Well, he was
analyzed.
saying officials from it was either the FBI, CIA, or the Presidential Scientific Study Team. They took everything from in that meeting that they had brought to that meeting. They took everything. They took the drawings. They took the recordings. They took the radar tapes. Everything. They took all that stuff. And the only reason that we do have, you can find the pictures online. You can, you have these. Callahan has gone on. If you look it up, he was on an episode of Unexplained Files.
Yep.
From the Science Channel, I think he was on the Science Channel. At one point. With all of his documentation from the event, like he kept copies of everything. I guess he was just one of those kinds of people. So luckily, he had all of those things, and he does a pretty pretty good breakdown of the thing. I don't know if you can find the clip on YouTube or something like that, but he does an actual breakdown of the radar tape visually. You can watch it, and he's like, "This is the transponder signal we have from JAL 1628. It's here, and then something pops up behind it here, and it's really visible. Like you can see it. It's not this straight identifiable line of like the transponder signal. It's this little dot. It's like a little kind of little bit undefined dot that pops up right behind it and follows it for a while. And you're just like, okay, that is something.
Right. Yeah, you can find that. And I forgot to pull it up while we were talking about the mothership, but actually Teruhuchi drew what he thought the mothership looked like. So so the only thing I'm going to pull up on the stream, you can find the rest if you go search for the case.
Hashtag look it up.
Look it up. So if you're watching the stream, it looks like a giant...
It looks like Saturn or Jupiter
or both together. It's a saucer shape, but it's got like very pronounced like top and bottom like the domes, like more than usual. And I guess this thing's the size of an aircraft carrier. So
yeah, it's I think either in a couple of drawings they have like a comparison of the size of the seven, or what the estimated size of like the craft and the 747 like right next to each other would be. And it's from Teruchi's descriptions and his account, this thing is huge. It's giant. It's really big.
Yeah, then it's actually in this picture. It's so small though that you can't really see it. So if you're looking at the front of the ship, he drew a tiny little aircraft. Does my cursor come on the screen? I don't think so. Search for that. It's a giant dome UFO, pretty much.
So yeah, this huge thing, and that's pretty much, what we've heard about it. This is all the information that we have from it. So you have these radar signatures, you have the descriptions that Teruchi and the crew gave, and that's pretty much all you have. And it's always been a kind of, this is probably one of I know I've seen it on a bunch of, it pops up all the time on the UFO ones because it is seriously one of the best documented, because you have this very established, well sectioned off timeline of what happened. There wasn't any radio contact breaking. Like they switched channels at one time because there was some radio interference between the ground control and JAL 1628. But you get a very clear picture of what happened, and you have a very definite timeline. 30 minutes is a long time, and I'm not really off the top of my head. I can't really think of any UFO encounters that lasted that long,
I
like
don't think so.
singular events that lasted that long.
Like continuous. Like a lot of times the event happens, there's missing time, and the people come back, it's 3 hours later, but the actual encounter does not happen like that. So yeah, it's pretty cool that way.
Another thing too, like Teruuchi, when he went back to Japan, like he really wanted to bring attention to this. He, you know what I mean? He went to the newspaper, everything like that, to try and like make everybody aware of what he saw. And he ended up losing his job.
Right. He got he got grounded. They took him off the flights and they put him
take
in a
away
desk
his
job.
TV privileges, no more video games, made him sit in his room. Like,
Right. No more
Do
Nintendos.
you know the extent of this grounding, Dan?
No more Nintendos. They took away his Game Boy.
Paper pushing.
Pokemon cards, all that shit.
So after he tells his story, they ground him onto a desk job
indefinitely.
But I mean, we heard about this. This isn't the first time we heard about pilots like not speaking up when they see stuff in fear of this exact scenario.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, they put him on a desk job. I believe he did at one point, like he either appealed or at some point he did get back in the air at some point, like towards the end of his career. So he flew for a couple more years and then he retired.
Is there are you sure though? Like, cause it wasn't like, you think back to like Foo Fighters. Wasn't Foo Fighters created in like World War II because of the amount of UFOs that were witnessed by pilots and stuff like that? Like, I don't think this is that abnormal for them to see something they couldn't explain and then report it.
Well, yeah, Foo Fighters were like those glowing orange orbs that were in like, they've seen them in the dogfights and stuff.
Yeah, but just like all I'm saying is like, this is definitely not, it's not that rare for a pilot to see something, you know what I mean, that they haven't they don't have anything to explain it, or you know what I mean?
Right. Well, it's not unusual for them to see something they can't explain, but I think it's probably a little bit more rare to see them actually file like a real report, because I'm pretty sure they probably asked Teruuchi, like, do you want to go on record?
Yeah.
That's what you're saying. Because I mean, for them, they probably didn't even really have to say anything. They probably could just went through the radar stuff, left that as it is, and being like, okay, but Teruuchi was when he was from kind of Derry, I think his last name was Derry, for one of the first FAA officials to talk with Teruuchi, said that, he was really excited, not excited, but he was really eager to tell what he saw.
Okay.
So, but I also think that, yeah, like Braden said, this is something that pilots and a lot of pilots do for a while. It's now, I believe, because we've come so far, and you have the ATIP stuff, which is, I think, was just the tip of the iceberg. But the United States Navy and Armed Forces have kind of like restructured their guidelines in reference to the reporting of UFOs or some, unidentified aerial phenomenon that happens up there. And so pilots can kind of feel safer in reporting these things and then not be so worried about what's going to happen to them. Like, okay, it's like either, well, you're crazy, or we can't have you up there because you're seeing things that aren't there, or we can't tell that, we can't back it up. So, I mean, it could be anything. They could ground you on medical reasons, being like, you could whatever, but make a case for that. But yeah, I think that there are a lot of pilots who are hesitant to go on the official record saying that they saw something. And that's why you don't get a lot of these.
But yeah, I think, as you said, Dan, like, I think as the years go by, you're going to hear more and more stories of like, Commander David Fravor and like the Tic Tac and the Gimbal and all those like newer ones that are slowly being released because of all these programs. And it's so much more talked about nowadays.
Yeah.
That I think you will see like, because there's that one in February, right? Well, we were maybe going to get into it, but I'm not sure. But there was one in February where the pilot was like, he radios down. He's like, yeah, something, I hate to say this, looks like a cigar shaped cylindrical object just shot overhead. So like, it does happen.
Yeah. And one of the points that Philip Klass did try to make, or kind of either at least take aim at Teruuchi's credibility, was that he spoke to the point that Teruuchi was or he called him like a serial UFO spotter, because he had reported sighting UFOs previously on a couple of occasions, occasions.
On his next flight after
and the
that.
following flight. Yeah. So
the flight right after, like within a month, he reported another one. But when they gave an explanation for that, he accepted it and was like, okay, I agree. That probably
Well,
was
you'd be
UFO
on
then.
edge too, though. You'd be on edge. Like, you'd be like, you would be a little nervous. I can imagine, like, you know, all of a sudden,
grounded for good reason.
if I got paced in my car for 30 minutes, like driving in the, like, you know, somewhere secluded, the next time I'm in my car, I'm going to be looking for everything, every little thing.
Yeah, so you'd probably be more likely to see something that you're like, oh, that was a UFO, and they're like, no, actually, it was this. You're like, okay, maybe it was.
Okay.
Well, yeah, his acceptance of the explanation, or the, you know, mundane explanation for what was going on. I mean, I think that speaks to some of his character, because it's like, dude, I saw something crazy up there. I'm just trying to tell you guys about it. You got something up there in the fucking air, giant aircraft carrier sized ball of lights. You guys should know about it and look that up. And I don't want to fly, you know, there's going to be other planes flying around there. So that, I mean, I'm not directly in Terrucci's head, so I can't really speak to what his whole attitude was, but I'm sure he was probably thinking about, you know, his fellow pilots up there flying through this air corridor and being like, if something's up there, like, you need to figure out what it is and tell other pilots about it. So, you know,
Yeah, if it was like a threat, an aerial threat or potential threat, yeah,
or just something up there that you could potentially crash into, whether it's a giant fucking balloon or whatever, you know, there's something out there.
Now, did he ever say? I couldn't really like. When did the mothership, like the giant craft, just disappear? Did it like seem to like just it was there and he looked again, it was gone, or did it slowly dissipate? Or
I think it slowly dropped off behind them, like it kind of like lost speed or whatever, and then kind of drifted off back, and then they just lost sight of it because they couldn't look behind them or anything really. So it drifted out of sight, out the back, and then was gone when, you know, at least when UA
before the next flight,
there.
before the check flight. Yeah.
All right.
So it's almost like if that was an intelligent craft, like maybe it knew it was being looked for at that point, and it's like, then it's pieced out, just dropped off far enough out of sight, and then took off.
Some reports I found that, like, I wasn't sure if they were substantiated or not, but like reports came afterwards that perhaps this object was seen pacing the flight that was sent out to take a peek and couldn't see anything, that there was some maybe radar activity behind that flight afterwards. I didn't find too much on that. I tried to look more into it. I wasn't sure if that was just like, you know, people taking liberties with the stories, but definitely not a lot of information on that I found.
The ATT word of the night is paste. If you guys haven't caught that yet, it is paste.
If it paste, man. Yeah. If you're getting paste, be careful.
Paste.
But getting into theories of potentially what it was, like, I actually really liked, Andrew, when you were touching on that, like, maybe the Russians had a craft. That's where I was kind of leaning to, because as a possibility, I'm definitely on the side of UFO and aliens. That's what this was. But, you know, Annie Jacobs, I think it's Jacobs or Jacobson, wrote Area 51, and her theory was that the Russians, when we were taking all the V2 rocket engineers, Russia was snatching up like aerospace engineers. And that they actually, and she had always said that Roswell was a crashed Russian craft.
Like based on Nazi, like the Nazi Bell or something, or who knows?
She's just like a highly advanced, something that like it's way they. She basically says that the Russians have their capabilities of like aerospace are decades ahead of us, if not 100 years ahead of us, and that, you know, potentially at this time, like maybe that's what you're exactly right. This is a last ditch effort. They've made a couple of these things, they're flying them, but it's just, you know, the cost of maybe keeping them up and going was too much at the time. But that's exactly what they are. We're some sort of spy craft for the Russians, right? It would make, like, when you look at the aerospace and like where it is, like it would make sense that if there was Russian running operations, like potentially it would be in that area. It would be an easy place for them to kind of shoot in, take some peek at stuff, see how, you know, capable their craft are against, you know, military radar and stuff like that, and then piece back to Russia.
Okay. I mean, so my theory, I think, would be, so if this is a UFO, like an ET craft, it almost seemed like they were just like, they were studying the craft, like the airplane. Like they were just pacing it. They get out in front of it. Those two craft disappear. They were like the scouts. They either go back to the mothership or wherever they go. The mothership comes up because it has like the data of it, and it just seems to do the same thing, just like follow them in a 360. And then as soon as it finds out, let's say that they're looking for it, that they're trying to bounce new radar, send new crafts up, it just takes off. It almost seems intelligent. The one thing I don't quite agree with Terahuchi is the size of the craft. It just seems, of all the UFOs we've ever talked about, when you look at his picture and it shows the size of a 747, at the time, this got to be one that, like, is it not the biggest jet, commercial jet? Jumbo?
Probably, yeah. Biggest, if not one of the biggest.
Huge jet. And then it looks like the jet is like a 1/20th size of the craft he describes.
Yeah, it's humongous.
So I think, in my mind, I think maybe the imagination of the size might have been overstated, perhaps. But it seems genuine that they seen something and it was a 30-minute encounter.
Well, it's backed up by radar, which is the huge thing, right? Like it's
kind of
other
right?
people are picking stuff up, anomalies. Let's say that are
Right.
picking up anomalies. So
yeah, so I think my theory would be it was an ET, like some type of just like, because I like the theory of ETs, like they're just scientists. If they did stumble upon this planet full of life, they're just observing, and then they maybe they're just, even if they're just drones, they gather information, they go back or whatever. That's one theory I've always thought. So that's kind of what I think. Andrew, what do you think?
There's a couple things that jump out at me that I don't really like that much. Like, like we touched on earlier, I made a point of asking, like, was it Terahuchi that made the majority of the statements? Was he the one that was kind of speaking for everybody? And he was also the guy that had several different encounters with UFOs.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So that to me is a little bit suspect. That being said, I think the three of them definitely saw something. I think Terahuchi kind of planted the seed that it was a UFO, and maybe the other two guys bought along. You know what I mean? And I think maybe Terahuchi really wanted it to be a UFO because he was already into it. You know what I mean? A lot of times the human eye sees things and we don't know what the fuck it is. We have no idea. You know what I mean? And it's too hard for you to fucking digest. Could have been one of those weather anomalies, potentially. The fact that we have this waffling as far as was it on radar, was it not on radar? Because from what I saw, they pulled that. They said, no, nothing showed up on radar. But there is that one guy that says, yes, I saw someone on radar. That's confusing. Makes me think maybe they're trying to cover something up. I like the idea of them sending some type of observation drone because it doesn't really fit that narrative of, oh, there's an Air Force base nearby. There's a nuclear base nearby. Like, what are they there looking for? What are they doing? We don't know. So maybe it is just a drone out there searching. And if that's the case, if they have the ability to travel, you know what I mean, light years away from where they are, they wouldn't send some massive fucking thing the size of Ego, the living planet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, we're in Alaska, end of the Cold War, so there was definitely nuclear bases up there. I don't know if that in that exact location, but I don't know. Dan, what do you think?
To some of the points, it's like I would probably side more on the ET side than I would like some type of secret Russian technology, because at this time, like 1987, you've got stuff like the B-2 bombers coming into service, like getting ready to go. You've got the SR-71 Blackbird. Both of their extremely advanced aircraft in terms of, aeronautics and technology and surveillance technology, all that stuff. Like, these things are fucking boss ass planes, and the Soviets couldn't touch them.
That we know of. And
then I would have to reason, you'd have to reason with like, okay, so they had these type of aircraft that were described by Terahuchi moving in ways that did not conform with how we understand the laws of physics. And then but they couldn't catch the SR-71 Blackbird.
Yeah.
So I'd have to, you'd have to reach further and try to be like, okay, well, maybe it is ET craft. He spoke to something about the maneuvering thrusters. So maybe they were to some type of scout ship, or perhaps even some sort of damaged craft or something like that. So the mothership had to intervene, had to come pick it up. Why it was pacing the 747, that's something that I wouldn't really know. It's hard to speak to the motives of a if it is an alien race that has crossed the vast distances
Hyper intelligent
of the universe in order to come over here, and maybe they were they were messing with them. Could have been that they were retrieving their things, or intimidation, or maybe to make sure they hadn't affected it in any way. Maybe they thought the craft was damaged because it started making sudden turns and things like that. Maybe that's how they reasoned with it.
Maybe,
but who knows? From what I see, it's like there was something on the radar. So there is a lot of evidence supporting, at least in my eyes, there is some evidence that is the best evidence that something was there. You had at least 2 or 3 radars. You had the radar from the airplane itself. You had the ground radar from the military base. You had the ground radar from Anchorage Air Traffic Control picking up something, So if all of them were picking up whether it's some type of interference or radar split, like that seems kind of suspect or highly unlikely. And also, I mean, it's not unusual to me that the CIA or FBI or whoever was in the meeting with Callahan to be like, you never saw this shit. You never saw this. We were never here. This meeting never happened. That doesn't really surprise me at all, because it's like, if they were, they didn't at that point, intelligence services didn't want anybody to have any idea of what pretty much was going on in or any they wouldn't want them to have any reason to doubt that the US was winning the Cold War, Right. It's like you don't want them to think that the US was behind and didn't have the forefront of technology, everything in terms of like, we rule the skies and we rule space.
And Dan, I agree with you. Like I definitely think it's an alien, but just going to your point of like, the Russians couldn't keep up with the one United States plane. That's if they maybe it was one of those scenarios where if they did potentially have some kind of craft, you wouldn't want to release its capability, like let your capabilities be known to chase like the Americans plane, which is maybe not as technologically advanced as yours. So you're just like, let it fly overhead, right? Pretend we can't keep up because we don't want them to know what we have. But I still, like I said, I'm on board with the aliens.
For sure. I mean, there is another encounter, but I think let's save this one for a confidential. It happened about 2 months after this in the same type of airspace. It was Alaska Airlines flight 53, I believe. So yes. We'll get to that one maybe on a confidential, because it's another short case, but it kind of, if you go search for other encounters in this area, this is not the only one to happen over here. So makes you wonder. I don't know. Fun topic though. Cool case.
Yeah, really cool case. Why don't we fire up the Randomatron?
Let's do it. Here we go.
Spin it up.
To you.
Woo! Oh, looks like we got a fan submission here. Dear ATT, my name is Jason Bourne. Due to not wanting to be named.
My God, it's Jason Bourne.
Can't get enough of the show. I look forward to listening every week. Now, I know from episodes long ago that you wanted an alien abduction story. Well, I thought that it's time for everyone to hear my story. I've only told 2 people this. One was my wife, and my best friend, who is also a fan of the show. The dates of the abductions were between 2001 and 2006. I lived in North Carolina in the suburbs of our town in Hendersonville. My bed was on the back wall where I was looking out the front bedroom window when laying down. My first abduction was in 2001 when I woke up, which is unlike me due to the fact that I'm a deep sleeper. I have seen 3 little grays outside my window, which none were the same height. The left was the shortest one, the middle being the tallest one, about 5 inches taller, and the one on the right being in between the 2 of them. After staring back at them for what seemed like forever, I suddenly passed out and woke up in a bright-ass room laying down on a metal bed. Light was so bright that every metallic-looking wall was reflecting the light, which made the room have no darkness to it. I only could open my eyes to look around. My body couldn't move at all, even though I wasn't strapped down to the table. Next thing I know, a tall gray walked in the room and started inspecting me. I could never remember if they did anything to me other than look over me, but I think they let you remember what they do to you. Oh, I think they let you remember what they want you to remember. The tall gray left the room. Then next thing you know, I'm passed out again, waking up on my bed the next morning. The second time I was abducted, I was about 10. It was similar to the first time, other than my bed being moved to the other corner, which when I felt a present, I sat up and looked out the same window. When I woke up, on the table again. After they were done checking on me, they let me get up and walk around the ship. It was full of doorways and a long hallway. When I got to the end, a door opened. It was the entrance to the command center. It was nothing but a big room full of button screens but no windows. There were a couple of grays working up there, some tall and some little grays. After looking around for a bit, I got escorted back to the room. After entering the room, I passed out, and the next thing you know, I'm back at my house, waking up the next morning. It took me a while to remember what had happened. Later, it all started to come back to me. Now, the most recent thing happened to me was in 2010 when we moved west to West Virginia.
Yeah.
It was a Friday night. My brother and I were on our way back home from skateboarding and hanging out. We lived in the middle of nowhere on top of a mountain. It was around 11 o'clock at night. We were heading up the hill to the intersection at the top of the hill. I noticed a big craft, looked as big as a football field, and the darkest black color to it. Flat on the bottom side, flat on the bottom, flat on the sides, and rounded corners with no sound. Now, what was strange is that it wasn't moving fast, around 10 miles per hour or less, just hovering over the tree line, which was only 50 to 70 feet tall. I'm freaking out in the passenger seat, saying, my brother, holy shit, do you see that? And my brother replied, do you see what? While I'm having my heart racing on what I saw, I do believe it was the ship that I was on. It was heading down the ridgeline to my house, and I thought it was coming back for me, but noticed I wasn't alone, or just to let me know I'm not crazy. But when we made the corner onto the road I lived on, it was gone. Sorry it's so long, but I had to get this out. I didn't tell this story to people because I didn't want them to think I'm crazy. I've only told 2 people this. You can think what you want, but I rarely have dreams and I know the difference. I thought, why not just tell the best podcast around to tell this story. Keep up the awesome work. Thanks, Jason Bourne.
Fuck, what a story, man.
Wild.
Well, that's the trademark of, like, you know, people say they don't remember when it happens, but they get these memories flooding back to them later on. Mm-hmm. It's like whatever kind of hold they have over you wears off. And like something can trigger that memory and then it just comes rushing back. Like whatever block they have.
Like you hear the right song or something.
Yeah.
And you try and assassinate the...
Yeah.
what prime minister was it?
Was it China? I don't know.
You become the lead singer for Creed.
No, but that's we haven't got a ton of actual abduction stories. That one was
that's
awesome.
that's like the one of the first ones.
Yeah, like that
That's
for
awesome.
sure. Yeah, great story. Andrew, theory of the week.
Our theory of the week is Kimberly Hackworth for her unreal rendition of Fjord, the half-orc eunuch. She did a good job.
Yeah, it was
awesome.
great.
That's canon.
It's fantastic.
We'll make sure to it'll be on the Facebook group, and we'll try and remember to take a screenshot, give credit, and put it on Instagram as well, if we remember. We're bad at it, but
Right. She's got a bunch of other. She's a Neo Moon art. I think she does a bunch of other art stuff. So it's like
great artist.
She's
Yeah,
very
pretty good
talented.
stuff.
Unreal artist, yeah, for sure.
If you're not supporting on Patreon and you want access to all our bonus stuff, after hours, and all the goodies, head over to patreon.com/Alien Theorist Podcast, or just check the link in the podcast description. Probably easier. This week's newest Patreon supporters, need a little more volume here. There we go. Are Ollie Gash, Alex Cruz, Abby 7, a full year pledge by Jacob Hurst, Arana Discoteca went up to a $6.66 pledge. Appreciate it.
Number of the beast.
Boom. Full year pledge by Fernando. Missy L, our newest top tier supporter, Daniel Clouston. Cheers, brother. We appreciate the support.
Right on, brother. Hell yeah.
Oscar Ramirez, Jay Wiseman went up. Not a yoked squatch. And Landon
So
Orr.
just a regular
Just a regular squatch, I guess. And Landon Orr. Thank you very much for supporting the show.
And as we always say at these things, in the end of these things, keep those eyes on the skies.
Peace.
The comfort of your favorite seat is now your comfy car selling command center, thanks to Carvana.
It doesn't get any better than this.
Your favorite seat's the best spot in the house. Make it even better by entering your license plate or VIN and getting a real offer in minutes.
There really is no place like home.
And speaking of home, Carvana will pick up your car from yours after you finalize your offer. Visit Carvana.com or download the app and sell your car from your comfy place. That's not just the sound of that first sip of Morning Joe. It's the sound of someone shopping for a car on Carvana from the comfort of home.
That's a good blend.
It's time to take it easy, like answering some easy questions to get pre-qualified for a car in minutes.
Talk about starting the morning right.
Just like customizing your terms so your car fits your budget. Visit Carvana.com or download the app to experience car shopping the way it should be. Convenient, comfortable. Ah.